Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. After we discussed in the first four chapters the individual level of analysis, and we discussed the introduction, the individual differences, the perception, and the motivation. And in the previous chapter, we discussed the group behavior, and this chapter was on the group level of analysis. The communication chapter, which the chapter will discuss in this video, it is on the organization level of analysis, and the communication is an essential part or element in the organizational process. What this means that all the managerial functions, planning, organizing, leading, and control, all involve communication activities, by the meaning of the manager need to communicate with subordinates or peers or top management to transfer information among them. So this chapter will be on the organization level of analysis. The learning objectives of this chapter: first, we will explain the elements in the communication process, and in a separate section we will compare the four major directions of communication, and then we will describe the role played by interpersonal communication in organizations, and we will discuss in this part the technology, the information technology needed to communication. Then we will discuss multicultural communication. After we identify a significant barriers to effective communication, we will describe ways in which communication in organizations can be improved. We might take all these learning objectives on two parts related to this chapter. Communication is the transmission of information and understanding through the use of common symbols from one person or group to another. Let's discuss this definition of communication to understand it. First, communication is a transmission of information. This means that communication means to share, not just speak or write. So you share a meaning, so you need for the other part or the other end to understand what you means. Why you need that? To influence and impact the behavior. So when you send a message, you need the other person to understand the same what you mean, to influence and impact his behavior. And understanding through the use of common symbols from one person or group to another. Yes, when we communicate, we use symbols, maybe verbal and non-verbal, and we will discuss this in this chapter, but just let us define it here. The verbal, we mean the spoken language, the written language, and the non-verbal, we mean the human action that come with this message, that come with the spoken or written language. So here, the effective communication come from the common understanding between both ends. Two persons or two groups, they need to understand and reach a common understanding of what the message is about. So for the effective communication to happen, we need to reach the common understanding between all group or a person. So here, this gives us an implication that sending the message or forming the message that you want to send is very, very important. Also, the listening skills in the other end is very important as well. And we will understand the meaning of listening in this chapter. Why this is important? Because yes, we may speak something, but you hear something different, and then you will understand something else. So serious problems might arise when the miscommunication or misunderstanding of messages happened due to maybe noise or distraction or any perceptual errors, that you learn in the perception chapter. This is what we mean by communication, and this is the definition of communication. The communication process. So here, as we said, the manager and subordinates always communicate something with each other. So here the communicator, who is a communicator? Maybe he is a manager, or maybe he is an employee sending a message. Say what? It is a message. So the message, as we said, it might be spoken, it might be written, it might be setting goals, maybe reports or request from an employee to his manager, or order from the manager to the employee. So the message saying something or sending a content need to be understood. In what way? Through a medium. A medium may be face to face, or by telephone, using emails, memos, banners on the wall, any medium suitable to send our message between two ends, the communicator and the receiver. The receiver, as we said, he might be the manager, he might be the employee, the peers in the same level of management, whoever the person. And he gives feedback, and from the feedback we understand, is our message listened well and act upon in the right direction. So if the medium was face to face, the feedback would be on the spot, right? So the other person will reply on the spot, so we understand that the message is already understood. But maybe if it's in a voice message or email, so maybe there is a period between the message and the response. So maybe later we will know the effect of our message on the receiver. So those are the elements of the communication process: communicator, message, medium, receiver, and feedback. And always the communicator need to know what is the feedback from the receiver. Is his message understood, or there is a miscommunication? And maybe this we will know it on the spot in a certain medium, or maybe later in another medium, and we will understand this. Here is the more detailed communication model. So we will just enhance our understanding with the previous figure. With here, this figure is more detailed. So again, we have the communicator. We start with the communicator, and we said he is an employee or a manager. He has ideas or information, by the meaning of he has a purpose to communicate with the other end, اللي هو the receiver. So the communicator now try to send a message. So what happened in the mind of the communicator? He is encoding the message. Encoding by the mean that he had these ideas, this information, and he want to translate it into a symbols that express his purpose, the communicator purpose. So maybe here he will try to write the message if it's in a written way, or he just tried to formulate what he want to say in an oral message. So this is the encoding process. It is a translation, what's in the mind, what are the ideas in the mind of the communicators. So then it comes the message. The message is the result of this encoding process, and the message will be in a form of verbal or non-verbal. Verbal is the text itself or the spoken language, and the non-verbal, it is, as we said, the human actions like the facial expressions or the posture or the hand movement, and we will talk about the non-verbal in a moment. Then we use a medium, which is the method to send our message. It is a carrier, بنسميها the carrier of the message. It may be the face-to-face communication or telephone or memos or email or WhatsApp or any medium we can use. What happened in the mind of the receiver when he want to receive now the message? The decoding. The decoding is the term used for the receiver's thought, because the receiver here is going through a process to understand what's in the message. Maybe he will going through this process of selection, so he will select only some of this message. He will try to organize it in his mind. He will try to give it a meaning by translation. He perceives something and then he will respond. The same as the perception process, he will only select some of the message. Maybe he will not understand all the message. He want to organize it in his mind to give it a meaning from his background or experience, right? And then he will respond to it. Here we will give a feedback. The receiver will give a feedback. So there is a direct feedback and indirect feedback. The direct feedback occurs, yes, when it's face-to-face, right? So we'll give a direct feedback. The indirect feedback, this will happen maybe later when I read the message or open my email. Maybe I will not write back or speak back to the communicator. Maybe my feedback will come in a form of productivity or quality, which is the response to what in the message of the communicator. So the one-way communication process do not allow receiver to communicator feedback, right? Which may increase the distortion or the distraction. While the two-way communication, like in the face-to-face, it will give the feedback in the spot. As we notice here, the dots, the red dots all over the model, all over the elements of the communication. This the noise. The noise might happen in the communicator voice is low, maybe the encoding itself, putting the ideas into a message, maybe it's wrong or not understandable, right? The message itself might not be clear. The medium that we use maybe it's not right for the message. And lastly, the decoding of the receiver maybe it has an error of perception. And as we said, the feedback may be indirect or indirect. So again, the indirect feedback maybe it's taking more of an error or maybe more of a noise. So all the definition of those elements will be in the next slide, so you can read them. The communicator, the encoding, the message, the medium, the decoding process, and the receiver, and the feedback and the noise. So that you can read the definition in the next slide. Here are all the definitions that we mentioned in the previous figure. The non-verbal communication. It is messages sent with body posture, facial expressions, head and eye movement. It is as important as verbal communication. So here when the communicator tries to send a message to the receiver is interested in two things. The verbal which is the words or the content of the message itself, plus the physical presentation of this message, what comes with it, which we said about, we call it before, the human action that comes with the words. Something like head, face, the eye movement, the hand movement, the posture of your body, your facial expression, the voice tone, كمان, also the distance that you put between you and your receiver. If you send a very intimate message, maybe you come close to your receiver. If it's a formal message, maybe you give a room or you give a space between you and your receiver. كمان, we also find that the clothing or the dress choices, if you dress formally or casual, this also send a message to the receiver. So here the communicators through this physical presentation or the non-verbal send a great deal of information than it is obtained in the verbal message only. So they are very important, those non-verbal messages. And we can see here as well that those non-verbal influenced by factors such as gender, the male, female, the race, the background, those are affecting the movement of our body or eye or our clothes or such things. Also, we can say that, and maybe this is, it could surprise you, that if the verbal and non-verbal message conflict, and if they are not coming in the same direction, the verbal and the non-verbal, receivers place more faith in the non-verbal. يعني بيصدق أكتر your posture, your eye movement, your non-verbal communication more than the words. Also, researchers said that facial expression and eye contact provide information about the emotion toward the receiver. So, as we said, the distance brings, the intimacy or the formal message. The researcher said that the human face displays over 250,000 expression. So this is many expression we could just give it by our face, not just the words alone. So as we said, non-verbal communication is a very important element in the communication model, of course, beside the verbal communication. And it has a unique qualities. Can be difficult to suppress, and it's hard to hide it, because it is something in your body when you want to express your emotions, your impression to the receiver. So it comes and it is observed. Even if you try to change the words, but the non-verbal, it comes easily as you used to use it. Also can contradict the verbal message being sent. Yes, it is maybe contradict with the verbal message. And we always said, yes, the verbal message could be very formal, but when you use a casual or you move your hands occasionally, maybe this gives a wrong message. Or if you come close to the person, many things, the vocal, the tone of your voice, if it's not serious enough, maybe it contradicts with the verbal message. Are more apparent to those who observe than to the people producing them. يعني when you bring those non-verbal, you cannot maybe observe them as the other party or the receiver. The one who notice or who want to perceive the message, he actually observe them more. And maybe you can just, as we said, it comes naturally from you. Maybe you cannot observe it. That's why you cannot suppress it. But the other party observe all the non-verbal with the verbal message that you sent. Are open to multiple interpretation. As we said, yes, the receiver can interpret differently than the message that you sent. He gives from his experience, from his background to this message. So he translates the nonverbal as he understands those nonverbal. So we have to be very, very careful when we give a message, verbally and non-verbally, all together. Okay, communicating within organizations. So in organizational structure, and you know the organizational structure, information can flow up and down, across, or diagonal. يعني information can flow vertically or horizontally or diagonally. Let's start with the downward communication. Communication that flows from higher to lower levels in an organization. That means that this communication, who is the receiver? The lower level management or subordinate. Who is the communicator? He is the manager or top level managers giving communication to the lower levels, right? So this kind of communication includes management policies, instruction, official memos, any kind like procedures. The management want to inform the lower level with any procedures, manuals, or give some publications, right? So these are some instruction that higher level managers want to give it to lower level managers or subordinate. So this kind of information is very important because you want somebody else to act upon those kind of information. So if this information is not enough or inaccurate, أكيد the subordinate or the lower level management will perform on it in the wrong direction. So here the communicator needs to encode the message and use the right medium, that is make him sure that his message or instructions or memos or policies is very, very clear to those in the lower level. Let's move to another kind of communication. The upward communication. This communication flowing from lower levels to higher levels in an organization. This means that the communicator here is at lower level than the receiver, right? So the receiver here is the upper level and the communicator هو اللي lower level. This includes suggestion boxes, group meetings, and grievance procedures. Grievance procedures like بنسميها الشكاوي والتظلمات من السبordinate للمانجمنت. Of course, this kind of communication, which is upward, is a management's source, very primary source, very important source for feedback to determine the effectiveness of the downward communication. صح؟ يبقى upward communication هنا when the employee communicate with his boss, giving him feedback about his performance, about some procedures, group meeting, anything. This will allow the higher level management to have this feedback and find out that their downward communication was effective or not. So here the subordinate provide managers with feedback about current issues or problems or information about day-to-day operation. The problem here انه ممكن ال subordinate او ال lower level management distort the information to look good if they want to look good in front of their bosses. So maybe they can distort the information, which is something طبعا very bad. Something good for this kind of communication انه لما ال top management allow the lower level management or subordinate to communicate with them, this relieves some tension in the lower level organization member ان هم بيشare information with their superiors or with their bosses. فبيحسوا ان هم they are participating, they are involved. فده بيديهم شويه empowerment، شويه enhancing ال productivity بتاعتهم، الموتيفيشن اكيد. if ان ال upper management listen to them and برضو act upon the suggestion they give them. The third type of communication, the horizontal communication. This communication flows across functions in an organization. For example, communication between مثلا production and sales, finance and marketing, different departments in college, within a university. So this is the بنسميها peer-to-peer communication. Necessary for coordinating and integrating diverse organizational function. Of course, this is very important to coordinate activities among different departments or peers. Also, it has another advantage, which is provide social need satisfaction. When peer-to-peer communication is allowed for coordinating, of course, their work together. Also, this gives us social need satisfaction when you communicate with your peers in the same level. Diagonal communication. This communication that cuts across functions and levels in an organization. Here, diagonally, communication is diagonally. يعني bosses to subordinate, subordinate to other subordinate, communicate all over the organizational structure. This is important when members cannot communicate through upward, downward, or horizontal channels. So here we use this kind of communication when we cannot use the other type effectively. Also, it is very helpful regarding time. برضو ممكن بتسهل التايمينج أو make it easier if you want to reach a boss without reaching your direct boss. So this is maybe reduce the time in communication among different members in the organization. Communicating externally, or the external communication, another kind of communication used to present products, service, and a positive image, or to attract employee to gain attention. Here, so the managers أكيد هنا أو المانجرز أكيد they collect information from inside and outside, and برضو try to give information inside as we mentioned, اللي هو upward و downward و diagonally. كمان we try to give information to outside environment أو different stakeholders outside the organization border. أو مثلا حاجة زي attract employee أو potential employee for recruitment، اللي هو ال advertisements عشان أعمل مثلا vacancies أو عايزة attract employee، أو give a positive image مثلا للgovernment أو للcompetition أو anyone. So here typically used for public relation, advertising, promoting, and customer surveys. So here again, the messages should be very clear, very formal, and the most important to leave impact in the stakeholder that I want to give the message to. Either he's a customer, either a government, or even a media, or any public outside of my organization. The message should be clear and leave the impact, the necessary impact that I want to leave. Okay, information richness. It is the amount of information that can be transmitted or communicated in an effective manner. What this means? It means that the channels or the medium that we use to send our message differ in their capacity to convey information, differ in their capacity to communicate our messages to the receiver. So what is the meaning of information richness? It is the amount of information that can be transmitted or communicated in an effective manner. This means that we have different channels we can use to send our messages. Those channels are different in their capacity to convey this information. فمثلا face-to-face interaction are very high in richness. ليه؟ Two-way communication and it's a real time and permits on the spot feedback as we said before. صح؟ face-to-face give us on the spot feedback لأنها two-way communication فit convey the message right away and you can understand in the spot the effectiveness of your message. Is it really understood by the receiver or not? مثلا something like the email, general email for employee, this is very low in information richness because you will wait until every single employee open their emails and read the messages and then reply in action or in text or a reply the message. So those are the email, the general email are very low in information richness. So we can say that the medium that enables high richness is more likely to result in common understanding between parties. صح؟ يبقى إذا ال high in richness, the medium that is high in richness هتوصلني, it will let me reach the understanding between parties, which is very important objective أو goal in the communication process. The communication process أصلا قلنا it is sharing knowledge or sharing information. It's not just a spoken language or a written language. You need the other party or the receiver to understand what you convey in your message. Okay, now let's take different type of messages and the best medium to use in the next slide. Here we have the common communication media, which are the medium that we can use to send our message. We can see here the channel richness. So we have channels that are differs in the richness of the information that could convey from richest to leanest, and we have many other channel in between. The type of message, we have either a message that's ambiguous, not clear, not routine, vague, فيها details كتير وفي روتين message اللي هي everyday day to day work or reports. The information medium, examples of it: face to face, telephone, electronic mail, memos and letters, flyers, bulletin and reports. So here in the middle here, the type of message. So if I have a message that is ambiguous or not routine or فيها details, فيها vagueness, vague في الانفورميشن بتاعتها, it's better to use a reach channel, which is the face to face or telephone. ليه face to face و telephone لما تكون ambiguous? Because I need feedback on the spot. I want to make sure that my message is understood by the receiver. So it's better to use face-to-face or telephone because I can answer questions, I can reply to the receiver, I can make my message more clear. So this is better if it's ambiguous. On the other side, if the message is routine and something really easy to understand, so I can use the email or memos or flyers, bulletin or report, and those kinds of channels بنقول عليها leanest, يعني it's not take in very rich information in it. It's type of medium that I can use it in the routine messages. So regarding the type of the message, I choose the right medium, so I make sure or guarantee that my message will reach the receiver as I mean, not as he perceived it wrongly or anything like that. So the ambiguous message, you need face-to-face or telephone, because this is on-the-spot feedback. I could answer questions. I could reply the question. I could make my message clearer. If the message is routine, so no problem, I can use any other medium, something like electronic mail or other things like letters, flyers. So from the richest to leanest channel richness, I can choose a medium that's suitable to my type of message. Let me give you some examples of the kind of message that I can use different channels in the next slide. For example here, مثلا face-to-face media, very rich, as we said, very high in richness. صح؟ on the spot، فيها feedback، فيها ايه direct feedback. Example مثلا على face to face when I ask my supervisor for a raise. So now I want to ask my supervisor for a raise. So I need to go face to face to ask him to give me a raise. The benefit of this, the ability to adjust message according to real-time feedback. So the manager will ask me, what did I do the last year? What kind of مثلا certificate that I get, مثلا normal training that I actually need a raise for it, so we can adjust our message according to the real-time feedback. مثلا telephone or a conversation or video conference, it's again high in richness, not very high but high. Something like meeting with virtual group members. خلاص أنا دلوقتي I don't have the capacity to meet my group members face to face, so I can use telephone or video conference. It is efficient, أكيد, less costly, less time consuming than traveling to central location. So I can use the right medium for the right kind of message. مثلا memos, letters, fax, personalized email, voicemail. This kind of media is very low, low in richness. Example like communicate a customer service policy to a customer. Communicate a customer service policy to a customer. عايزه اقول للكاستمر ايه هو الكاستمر سيرفيس بتاعتنا، البوليسي الجديده اللي احنا عملناها مثلا to deal with customers. فانا اقدر ابعت letters، ابعت fax، ابعت voicemail، email. This is the benefit of it, efficient and cost-effective way to communicate routine information. It is routine information، مفيش حاجة vague فيها ولا not clear. مش لازم بقى أروح face to face ولا إن أنا أعمل حاجة تانية ممكن to cost me more. حاجة زي general email، financial report، flyers، bulletin board، computer report. This is very low in richness. علشان we have to wait until people open their email أو إن هم يسي الفلايرز أو يقروا الكمبيوتر report. So something like annual report to shareholders، عايزة أبعت ريبورت للشيرهولدرز اللي هم دافعين الستوكس بتاعتي في الشركة، فده نوع من standardized information for large audience. لو أنا عايزة أبعت حاجة large audience مش هروح أقابلهم face to face، ولكن I use example like general email أو الكمبيوتر report. And it's very low in richness.